Now we're ready to plot out our drawing. So as I mentioned before, we're going to do all of our drawing at 1:1 scale in the model. This is where you do any of our geometric drawing and editing, creating all of our line work and shapes. And then next to it, you'll see 2 layout tabs, and we can always add more. These tabs are basically paper setups. So we can do 4 things, 4 main things with this paper setup. We can control the size of the page itself. We can control the size of the viewport, which is the view into our model. We can control the scale that the viewport shows the model at. We can control the positioning of the model. We can always go back to model over here to keep drawing. And anytime I make a change, for example, it will be reflected in the layout. So it's live. So let's go to our layout. The first thing we want to do is click on the viewport. You can control the size and positioning of the viewport here. And the drawing won't be rescaled to fit in there. The viewport is just a view into the model. So we can control how it's laid out on the page. And then we can click on it, and we can have some control over the scale. And there's all these predefined commonly used scales. So for example, 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. The problem with this is that at that scale, we can't fit the whole drawing on the sheet. So we have 2 options, smaller scale or bigger sheet. It's a smaller scale. But what about a scenario where we really do want 1/8 of an inch equals a foot? We don't want to change the scale. Our only other option is to change the sheet, and that's the actual physical size of paper it prints on. And for that, we right-click on the Layout tab, and we go to Page Setup Manager. Here's where we can create multiple layouts. We're just going to modify this one, and the only thing we'll change, we don't do anything with the printer, is the paper size. So ArcD, 24 by 36, and let's just do the one below it, 36 by 24. That's more of like a landscape setup. And when we say OK, we close, you can see that our viewport has stayed the same size, but our page is actually now quite big, a full 24 by 36 inches. And we can now click on the viewport, and it will do whatever we tell it to. So we're going to make it a big size. And now at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, we can see a lot more of our planting plan. The other thing we can do, and the scale hasn't changed just by resizing the paper of the viewport. We can also try multiple scales there. We can also change the positioning. So by double clicking within here, now if I click and hold the center mouse button, I'm not changing the zoom, I'm changing the positioning of the drawing within the page so that it's as centered as possible. Notice if I scroll out or in, it actually does change the scale, and down here I've now lost my scale because I'm actually in the positioning of the model. However, it's pretty easy to set back, and then I can go in and reposition. And then to get out of this, just double click out to the side. So now I can get back in to change the viewport dimensions, double click inside of it to change the positioning, and then double click back out here to escape. Now that this is set up, if I've got the paper size, the scale, everything's showing the way I want it to, I can just do Control P for print, and I can either print it to an actual plotter where it will come out as a piece of paper, or I can print it just to a simple PDF. And so let's do that. Not changing anything else here, just the paper, the printer. And what I can do is test print. It's going to print it, but print it to the PDF. And you can see it's printed it right. It does match. It somehow rotated the page itself. But all I have to do is go in here and edit my PDF. And I shouldn't even have to really do that. I should be able to just change my page orientation here. So now that looks the way I want it to. And so that's it. So now I can print this to the physical plotter if I was happy with it. I could also bring it into Illustrator or Photoshop and do some illustration, knowing that this is correctly plotted at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot.